Hey, next on the T Nation, thank you so much for coming back and tuning into part 2 of this week's show featuring my conversations with Matthew Laurance and Keith Stewart. As you guys know, Matthew Laurance is one of my favorite people on the planet. What a wonderful human being and a great friend and mentor he has been to me over the years. This is going to be his 23rd appearance with me, whether it's here on Next on the T or over on our football show, Thursday Night Tailgate. There are some big anniversaries that just occurred for some of the things that Matthew was an actor in. You'll hear those stories. Plus, you'll also hear about how a Yankee fan became a Cleveland Indian fan at fantasy camp way back in 1994. You'll hear that story as well, plus a whole lot more when Matthew joins me. And then we'll round out this week's show with a visit from Keith Stewart. Keith is just one of the great golf handicappers anywhere. The guy is uncannily good. 30 outright winners he has picked between the two tours, the PGA Tour and the LPGA Tour, over the last few years. You'll hear about his methods and how he does it when he rounds out this week's show. So sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next hour or so. Before we get started, I want to remind you about our friends over at 2 Under. 2 Under men's performance briefs are the unofficial underwear of the PGA, Ryder Cup, and President's Cup teams, and are sold in over 3,000 golf pro shops and golf specialty retailers nationwide. Ricky Fowler is their global ambassador, and over 50 other PGA, Korn Ferry, and Champions Tour players wear them. Just to mention a few, they are David Toms, Jerry Kelly, Justin Thomas, William McGirt, Scott McCarron, and Chris DeMarco. The Joey Pouch technology provides the ultimate male asset management, delivering maximum comfort from the tee box to the boardroom to the bedroom. Go to 2under.com to check out the bundle specials that offer substantial discounts for being a Next on the Tee listener. That's the number 2, UNDR.com. 2 Under, performance in your pants.
Every January, PGA Tour Superstore pros meet every manufacturer, learn about the latest equipment, log thousands of hours of training, and together hit over 100,000 balls. All so they can get you the perfect fit.
Okay, now back, and I'm humbled to say this, for the 23rd time is one of my all-time favorite actors, radio hosts, and people on the planet for that matter, and that is Matthew Laurance. Matthew is the host of Backspin Golf, which you've heard me talking about for years because it's fantastic, and the best way to start your Sunday mornings. I know the show is currently on hiatus, but you can find it on ESPN Radio, WLXG in Lexington, Kentucky, or online at WLXG.com. He also has a daily show that you can tune into from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Time called The Matthew and Jimmy Show. I'm only slightly frosted that he didn't call me to co-host that show with him, but a lot of therapy has gotten me over it. In 2020, Matthew was recognized by the Kentucky section of the PGA of America as their media representative of the year for his great contributions to the game. Among his other great works on the big screen is his stellar performance as bass player Sal Amato in one of my all-time favorite movies, Eddie and the Cruisers, which you guys know I just can't get enough of. You've probably seen Matthew on Saturday Night Live, Beverly Hills 90210, One Tree Hill, or 30-something. He's also been a sideline reporter and a pre- and post-game host for Duke basketball and now Kentucky basketball. And like I say all the time, as far as stars go, they don't come bigger or better than Matthew Laurance. Good evening, Matthew. How are you, my friend?
I don't even know what to say to that, Chris, really. First of all, I'm exhausted just listening to what I've done. I am exhausted. I thought I was tired before, but I'm really tired now. And before we go any further, of course, thank you for that completely unnecessary introduction. But I would like to say congratulations to you, which I don't think people do enough.
For what?
Excuse me, this very podcast, Next on the Tee, which I always talk about on Backspin Golf in the morning, was just awarded gold at the 2024 Davey Awards for individual podcast episodes in sports, among your many other honors. So congratulations.
I appreciate that very much. All thanks to great guests like you, my friend.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Let's dish some dirt, all right? this whole thing is it's just too nice. It's just too nice.
All right, so I got to ask you because I was surprised to see something that you responded to out on social media a week or two ago. I know
Yeah.
you're a huge New York Yankees fan, but you
Yes.
talked about how you attended a Cleveland Indians fantasy camp back in 1994. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, this is great, Chris. It's one of the, I have had an incredibly blessed life, as I always tell you. And a lot of times I don't think about things I've done. There's so much going on in all of our worlds and my kids and blah, blah, blah. So when I get to like tell a story like this one, it always makes me feel really good. I had a friend among the many friends, professional athletes that I got to know over the years. I was very friendly with a pitcher named Matt Young, who pitched for the Mariners for a long time and also for the Cleveland Indians. And I was living in LA in 94. And Matt was pitching for, I can't remember, it was the Indians, obviously. And I went to Anaheim because they were playing the Angels. And I went to see Matt. And I was sitting in this section of stands where all the family of the Indians and stuff were sitting because I was a friend of Matt's. And a couple innings into the game, a guy turned around and he said to me, "You're Matthew Laurance, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he knew some of my work and he introduced himself. I can't believe I remember this. His name was Andy Miller. And I can't remember why I go to Kroger, Chris, but this stuff I remember. And he says to me, "What? How come you're here? Are you a Indians fan?" I said, "Well, uh, Matt Young is a very good friend of mine." And he said, "I run the Cleveland Indians fantasy camp. Would you have any interest in coming to the camp?" And I said something really smart alecky like, "Not for 5 grand, I don't. I'm a Yankees fan," or something like that. And he said, "No, no, no. I'll take. Don't worry about that. I would love to have you come. We'll take care of everything. We'll fly you there. Blah blah. All that stuff." So I ended up going to the Indians fantasy camp in 1994, and it was an incredible experience. I met the most wonderful people. Um, all of them were either from Cleveland or were born in Cleveland, obviously. Just a great week at this Indians fantasy camp. And I'll tell you the stories that the best part, if people listening ever get a chance, if you have a favorite baseball team, whatever team it is, and you ever get a chance to go to one of these fantasy camps where they have players from all different eras are there and coaching you, you should try to do it because the actual baseball is really fun. But the best part is the night times, is the dinners and after dinner, sitting in the bar and having a couple drinks and listening to these ball players tell their stories. And they love doing it. And I, I'm telling you, and finally, this is great. The last day, um, our last game we were playing, I'm sitting in the dugout and I can't remember which one of the Indians it was. By the way, both Franconas were there. Tito, dad, Tito Francona, and Terry, who is now called Tito, but his dad will always be Tito to me. Anyway, they were both there. And I was getting ready. I was coming up fourth in that inning. And right before I was coming up, they replaced. There was a very now I was in my mid 40s at this point. There was a gentleman who was quite elderly at this camp, and he didn't do very much there, but he was revered by everybody there. And they put him out on the mound, the batter before I was coming up. And I turned to our coach and I said, he's really going to pitch?" and he said, let me tell you something. He said, that guy's 80 years old. He said, I promise you can't hit him. And I just kind of looked at him and he said, you'll see. And I got up there against this guy and he threw me 3 50-mile-an-hour curveballs that I didn't come within 2 feet of hitting.
Wow.
And I said, after the inning, I went over to the dugout and I shook his hand. And then I walked back to our dugout and our coach said, that guy, he said, do you have any idea who pitched at Erasmus Hall High School in Brooklyn, New York? Of course I did. I said, yeah, Sandy Koufax. He said, that's the guy you just hit against that still holds the strikeout record at Erasmus Hall High School in Brooklyn. And he's a retired judge from Cleveland and an icon in Cleveland, Ohio.
Wow.
It was and I'm telling you the story, and I feel like I was there yesterday. I mean, it was fantastic. I had a great time. That's a long-winded way of saying, yes, I went to the Indians fantasy camp in 94. Oh, boy.
Who were some of the other Indian legends that were there?
Well, Rick, well, see, now you put me on the spot. Rick Mantley, I think, was the center fielder. They had a bunch of them. I mean, the two I really remember were the Tito.
Yeah.
Tito Sr. Was telling us a story one night. We were somebody asked him how he felt. Now, this was 94. How he felt about all the money that ball players were making then. And he said, let me tell you a story. He said, when I was playing for the Indians, I don't remember the exact figure. He said, it was 340 or something. He said, I had an incredible year, one of the best batting averages in the American League. And I went to Gabe Paul, who was our owner, and I asked for a $5,000 raise, and he turned me down. So
Wow.
you want to know what I think about ball players making money now? And you got to remember, those guys, they had second jobs, most of them. They sold cars, they sold insurance, all that kind of stuff. Those two guys, they were both fantastic. Everybody there was fantastic.
Taking that in a little different direction, you posted a couple of weeks ago about the 34th anniversary of Beverly Hills 90210 getting kicked off. You joined the cast a year later. What do you remember about joining a show that had become such a huge hit?
Well, the interesting thing about my career on 90210, which I was on for 9 years of the 10, was the first year of that show. It was the lowest rated TV show on television. It was on Fox, which was still a fairly new network. Many places in the country didn't even have Fox yet, and it was the whole first year. It wasn't watched by very many people. And what happened was, the second season, they did something very smart. Back then, all the shows on TV during the summer showed reruns. And then in the fall, they would start new shows. Well, 90210 kept showing new episodes and people started watching. And then, as I recall, they sent Luke and Jason Priestley to a shopping center in Florida, I think it was, to do a personal appearance. And something like 15,000 people showed up. And all of a sudden, the people at Fox went, wait a minute, well, what? Something's going on here. And that's when they really started putting a lot of money behind it and advertising, and it caught on because there were really no shows with high school kids in it. And we all know what happened after that. And when I came on, which was the second year, it was pretty incredible because I had done a lot of, I've been very lucky in my career up to that point. And they were all very excited that I was doing the show. I remember Luke and Jason and Jenny and Tori. And, when I got there the first day, they all came over to me and thanked me for being on the show. And it was right from that first time I was there, it was absolutely wonderful. And to see all of them grow through the years, and people have no idea uh, really what they all went through. Um, because whatever people think, it's not easy being that young and being among the most famous people in the world, really, and making money and all of the fame. It's not as easy as people think it is. And except for one of them, who I never name, they were all incredible people to me. I loved every one of them.
Another anniversary that came just a few weeks
Oh
back
boy, yeah,
was the 41st anniversary of Eddie and
yeah,
the Cruisers,
yeah,
right?
yeah. That's right, Chris. That's
You you
right.
you were telling me a few weeks ago that every day someone says something to you in reference to that movie. Talk
Yep.
about the staying power it's had.
As I always say, it truly is. It's a blessing, is what it is. Because I know you know this because I've told you this story 30 times, right? How many times have I been on Next on the Tee, or just our conversations? Um,
23 times on this show.
oh my Lord. Uh, I happened to see, I got a Facebook memory today that I did one of the episodes exactly 5 years ago to the day. Today was one of them.
Wow.
Anyway, what were we talking about? See, this is what I mean. Oh yeah, Eddie and the Cruisers.
Right.
I always say this when we did the movie. It was a low budget movie. It was an incredible time, and we went through all kinds of things. And when the movie came out, it was gone. It was in the theaters for, I don't know, 10 days, maybe, and it was gone. And we all went, okay, it's the way it is. And I had a great time and I met some great people. And then cable was just starting back then in the mid 80s. And all of a sudden, I think it was about 6 months later, maybe, Eddie was on HBO. And almost instantly, it became a cult classic. Within a very short time, the album went triple platinum. And we all kind of went, wait a second, what is going on here? We started to hear songs on the radio, and to think that it was 40 years ago or 41 years ago now is astonishing, because it happens to me all the time where people will bring up that movie. And it's the amazing part of it is the influence it had on people, and why that movie is not just it's great music and whatever else you think about the movie. Of course, I was brilliant in it. I'm not talking about that. I don't like to pat myself on the back.
Of course not.
You know that better than anybody. Anyway, um, I've told you this too. A couple of years ago now, we had those floods in eastern Kentucky that were devastating, horrifying. And I was have a show here. I've been here 15 years now, so I have a lot of close friends, and I have people that have family in Eastern Kentucky, and I wanted to do something. And I went to the gentleman that runs the Kentucky Theater in downtown Lexington, which is iconic. It's been there for decades. And I asked if I could have a Saturday night to do a special showing of Eddie and the Cruisers. And we would promote it, and we'd get people to donate, and all the money would go to this charity, ARC, in Eastern Kentucky to help people. And he's a wonderful man. And he said yes, and we could do that. And the response to it, forget about how many people donated online because they couldn't be there. There were probably about between 100 and 150 people that came that Saturday night. And I stood in the lobby to meet people and say thank you for coming. And the stories, it's going to happen again, Chris. You make me choke up every time. Like, ugh. the stories that people came over to me and shared with me about why that movie was important. And this is the one I always talk about. And I think people listening, if they haven't heard this, this will mean something to them. A woman came over to me who I knew, but I had never known she felt this way about the movie. She told me once she loved it, but she said, I never told you why it's so important, but my father passed away from a brain tumor, and he had a red convertible. And in the last stages of his life before he died, the thing that gave him the most joy was getting in his car with me. I would drive, and we would put the top down and just drive and listen to the music from Eddie and the Cruisers, and just drive for an hour, sometimes two, sometimes 20 minutes. That gave him more joy than anything. Well, I mean, I have tears coming down now. I was a mess when she told me that, but the number of stories of why that movie's important to people, and a lot of times it had to do with their parents. It's an incredible thing to me. It really is. And also, when you're 40 years later and you sit in the theater and look at what you looked like 40 years ago on a movie screen, it's sobering. I can say that to you. That's the word I would use. Anyway.
Yeah, just a couple more before I let you go, Matthew. But I want to stay on the same topic because as I was doing more research and prep for our conversation tonight, the Palace of Depression, which was a junkyard where the owner was said to have been building a palace out of a bunch of junk. It's
Yeah.
actually a real place in Vineland, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Volunteers went back there and they've restored that place. Did you ever go there when you were filming those scenes?
I didn't film anything there, but we all went over there one night. And that place was nuts, man. I'm telling you, that place it was crazy, the stuff. And I remember reading the script and getting to that part, and I was like, wait a minute, what? What? Because I couldn't visualize it in my head. And then we all got over there, and it all made sense that Eddie would be walking around in this place that he went to. It was crazy, Chris. I mean, there's no way to really describe it other than to see an actual photograph of and that's the thing about movie crews, and that's the production design of a movie. When you see production designer, that's who does that stuff, the look of the movie. It's amazing what they do. It's absolutely incredible. And that was really out there.
And speaking of scenes where the movie was shot, did you see that an executive producer from PBS reached out to Summers Point City Council President Janice Johnston a couple of months ago and said they want to tell the story of the making of Eddie and the Cruisers at the site of Tony Mart's there in Summer Point? That they're actually trying to get something together to do the making of?
Actually, yes, I have heard about this. I've heard different things about it because I actually got an email about it, about possibly being involved. And I hope it's really great, but I'm not going to do it. I'm a little leery of those kinds of things. I like where I am right now in terms of the movie and how people feel about it and how I feel about it. And I don't know. I hope they do it, and I hope it's really great. That's what I'll say about it.
Matthew, before I let you go, remind our listeners about how they can listen to your shows, plus stay up to date with you, whether it's online or it's on social media.
Well, as you said, WLXG.com. I'm on every day from 10 to noon with my co-host Jimmy on the Matthew and Jimmy show. And you can go on WLXG.com and hit listen live. And you can hear me rant about sports because that's what I do mostly. Yeah. And I'll just say this to you, Chris. Being from New York, You know what the thing I'm proudest of in my 15 years of being on sports radio is?
No, please.
I have never once dropped an F-bomb on the air
Really?
in 15 years.
Really?
And I think you know me well enough to know off the air, it's every fourth word, basically. I'm a true New Yorker. I'll just say that. So
Oh, I would have guessed.
WLXG,
I would have guessed Sean would have had to dump something at some point.
well, they have the button. They got the 7-second button, but I just I'm a total professional. Anyway, anyway, I've said some other things I wasn't proud of, but I've never dropped an F-bomb. So WLXG.com, hit listen live, or we have an app. You can search for the app. ESPN Radio Lex is the app. Anytime and listen to our great station.
Matthew,
And Twitter at Real Lauro 5, REALLAURO and the number 5.
there you go.
There you go.
You're a treasure, my friend. I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show for a 23rd time. I'm already looking forward to 24. I hope it's soon.
It's unbelievable. It's up to you. You know where I am.
All right. Next
All right.
week, right back here. You and
Okay.
me.
All right. Love you.
Love you.
See
you,
ya.
Matthew.
Bye.
That is the wonderful Matthew Laurance. Just a wonderful human being. Means so much to me. He has been such a great part of this show, and he joined us over on the football side on Thursday Night Tailgate several times as well. So much fun. And you guys know, I'm an Eddie and the Cruisers nut. I love that movie. And to think that I get to spend time with a guy who was a star of that movie, and he's now become a wonderful part of my family, that it just so much joy comes from Matthew Laurance on our conversations. I love that guy, and we'll get him back on the show again very soon. Coming up next is one of the great golf handicappers of all time. He has to be, and you'll hear why in just a minute when I bring him into the show, and that is Keith Stewart. Before Keith comes on, out at a hidden gem on the tip of Long Island, which you're going to hear all about in just a moment, and that is Keith Jarvis. Before Keith joins me, let's talk about our friends over at Squares Golf. And folks, do you sway and you're off balance in your golf swing? You know what? It could be your shoes. A golf shoe needs structure to provide stability and reduce sway. How can you tell if your shoes lack structure and are hurting your game? If you can hold your shoes by the toe and heel and twist it, toss it. Squares was designed for the perfect balance of structure and comfort. Isn't it time you tried Squares? Try the new Speedbolt at squares.com. That's SQAIRZ.com. All right. Now, speaking of coming back and being a part of the show, I'm now joined by Keith Stewart. Keith is a Class A teaching professional. Back in 2016, he was presented with the Horton Smith Award by the New Jersey PGA section, which is given annually to the PGA professional who is the model educator for PGA golf professionals. In 2019, he was named the section's PGA Professional of the Year. A year later, in 2020, he was recognized with the Bill Strasbaugh Award for being a PGA professional who displays outstanding integrity, character, and leadership. Last year, he started a new site called Read the Line, where he shares his insights and picks for that week's tournaments, and he is uncannily good at doing that. So if you enjoy betting on golf and you've got the means and the disposable income, sign up for his newsletter. Check him out. Again, the site is called readtheline.com, and you're going to be putting some extra cash in your pockets each and every week. I got to spend some time with Keith at the Tour Championship the last couple of years, which has been wonderful, listening to him and gaining his insights and knowledge about the game and about sports and betting in general. It's been a privilege to get to spend that time with him, and I'm lucky to get to spend a third time with him here this week on Next on the Tee. Hey, Keith, how are you, my friend?
Chris, if I was any better, I'd be twins for sure. I mean,
would be.
it's a pleasure to be with you this evening and talk about some golf and God knows what else we'll get into. Maybe some Eddie and the Cruisers. Oh, you've already checked that box. So.
Yeah, you're a little late on that one, but there's enough other things to get into, and let's do that. Because as you and I are discussing at the Tour Championship when we got to spend some time together, betting has taken off across all sports, including golf, and no one is better at picking winners than you are. Talk about the amount of research, and you're pairing that up with your knowledge as a PGA professional and your general knowledge about the game of golf. You kind of marry all that together. And like I said in your intro, you're uncannily good at picking out who's going to win that week.
Well, I appreciate the intro, and really what it comes down to is that uh, as a golf professional for many many years and a green grass operator for over 20, I've learned a lot of things about just being around the game, and that led me down a road that at one point in my career I said, you know what, I'm thinking about a next chapter, and I want to start my own business, and I think that all PGA professionals at the club kind of have an entrepreneurial soul, and I tried to enhance that, and I was inspired by some other people that in the sports business world, and I started a betting company called Read the Line, and I cover the LPGA and the PGA Tour on a weekly basis, as you so eloquently put. And what it comes down to is that as a PGA professional, the first thing I did as a business strategy was, instead of advertising and doing all the different other things, is that I travel to the site, and that's why we see each other every year at the Tour Championship, is because I'm there handicapping the event. And if you think about it, and maybe it's applicable to your audience on Thursday nights for the tailgate show, but like, when's the last time you went to a Steeler game and the handicappers were there on the field, like, checking the size of the players' cleats and what the field conditions were like and what the weather was going to be that evening? You guys just had a Sunday night football game, and there wasn't one person doing that. And the secret sauce to what I do is I take all of that 20 plus years of golf knowledge and I take it to the venue. And I went to 20 plus PGA Tour and LPGA, events this year, and I handicap on site. And that leads to a lot of our success because I have educated eyes and I watch what the players are up to with their coaches, their body language, how they're playing in the practice rounds. And then we put together, a couple weekend wagers for people to have some fun. And then we've been very fortunate, but I really think it all comes down to that decision I made back in the beginning 3 years ago when I started the company, was to travel to the site and to learn as much as I could about the players in their habitat.
Keith, I want to take that a step further because I want you to get the amount of credit that you have earned and you deserve so that people understand how great Read the Line is, because you are constantly out there. To your point, you're talking to people. You're in the media room. You're out on the golf course. You're talking to people out there. You're looking at the agronomy. You're doing all kinds of studies to figure out who is going to be the winner or right around the top 5 that week. You marry all this great information together to formulate what you're going to do. Talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, a simple analogy to that is like why your show Next on the Tee is so good. It's your level of research. I mean, how many people know that I won the Horton Smith Award in 2016? It's not so much how many people care, but if you're going to do this interview, right? And, like you did with Matt, that you just closed, I mean, the level of research of knowing it was the 41st anniversary of Eddie and the Cruisers is absolutely, it's unmistakable in how that sets up the guest for success. Well, in the same way, as a golf professional, I approach, handicapping golf events as a golf professional, as if, let's say, Chris Mascaro was going to play in the Tour Championship at a newly renovated East Lake. If I was your PGA coach, I would approach it the same way. I would look at the golf course. I would look at the skills that you would need in order to perform well, in order to figure out what those skills were. I would look at the agronomy. I would look at the length of the golf course, the scorecard, all of those little details. And I would start there. I would not start with a big Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of data. I would actually start with the grass. I would actually start with the design of the golf course. And then I would look at my player and I would say, okay, do they fit or do they not fit this track? And if they do, then okay, let's take it a step further. Is Chris playing well right now? In the last 2 or 3 weeks, is he in good form? Maybe we've established that Mascaro fits East Lake Golf Club. All right, this is a good spot for him. The design, the redo by Andrew Green and everything, it's all very, very good. But, okay, that's in the past. This year, is he playing well? And all of those things really come to my eyes and my brain as I travel around with the guys and I go to all the signature events and I go to all the major championships, because when you see them operate in real life, then you have a much deeper appreciation for whether or not they're working or they're working, meaning, do they have it working or are they working on it? And, that's really been, it makes it a lot of fun for me, and it makes every week just a little bit different. But at the same time, it really still kind of feeds the fever that I have for the game of golf. At the end of the day, I was a kid that just loved the game. And I'm old enough that I was pre-Tiger Woods. So it wasn't like it was popular, right? And it was something that I did as a kid. I was a bag rat at the local club, and I just really appreciated the nuances of all that go into 18 holes. And, take that a million steps further. That's why I am where I am now. And it makes the process of what I do, figuring out the puzzle every single week, just that much more fun.
Keith, let's talk about what's going on this week because it's the week of the Zozo Championship on the PGA Tour played down in Japan. Hideki Matsuyama is in the field. So is Max Homa, Xander Schauffele, Ricky Fowler, Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, just to name a few of the guys that have gone over there to play. But what are your expectations? What are you looking forward to seeing this week?
Well, if you go back to this golf course, and this is the what now, sixth edition of this, but only 4 of them have been played in Japan. The pandemic put one in Southern California, and that was in 2020. It was won by Patrick Cantley. But you could go back to the first one, 2019, won by Tiger Woods, his last victory to date. Hideki won. You had Captain Keegan Bradley won in 22, and then Colin Morikawa won last year. If you start to think about those particular players, throw Tiger out for a minute because he's the GOAT. But if you look at Hideki, Keegan, and Colin, no one would accuse those guys of being lucky of finding their golf ball. They are all extremely good ball strikers. And when you look at this golf course that they're going to play, Accordia Golf, Narashino Country Club, the way that it is set up, it's a par 70 that's about 7,000 yards. So it's not super long, but the scores don't go very deep. The average winning score over the last couple of years is just 15 under par. Now, most of these fall events are birdie fests, like we just saw last week at the Shriners. That was won, at 20 under or 19 under, whatever JT Poston was, right? So it's really interesting to me that I am in search of who's striking the golf ball the best. On top of that, no one would accuse Keegan Bradley or Hideki Matsuyama being great putters, right? Look, don't get me wrong. The guys are world-class players. Hideki's won a Masters and a green jacket and so on and so forth. Keegan's also a major championship winner. Colin's got 2 of them. But when we think of the greatest putters on the PGA Tour currently, we don't think of those guys. So it's a ball striking palace where maybe I don't need a guy to be the world's best putter, and he could still do very well there. Those are my expectations heading into this week. We've looked at the weather. Looks like it's going to be a little bit wet. It's going to be a little bit cool. But overall, I expect 4 days that are going to happen overnight for us where guys that can keep the ball in play away from the tree-lined fairways, keep them out of the trees, avoid those 73 bunkers. We got a couple holes with water, over some rolling terrain there on the eastern side of Tokyo. And, that's what I'm looking forward to. And the people that I'm featuring in my lineup card this week can certainly check those boxes.
Let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk to you about the TGL Golf League that
Ooh.
is in the news this week. They actually have a playing schedule out now. Surprisingly, neither Tiger nor Rory and their teams are going to be playing in the opening week. They held them off a week or so that their matches wouldn't conflict with the wild card round on ESPN. But is this a league that you're interested in watching?
Absolutely. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say my interest level is somewhere in the ballpark of a 9. There's no doubt about it. I think that in many ways, and we could go off on a tangent for hours about disruption in the world of professional golf, but the league that was started called Live really didn't do anything different, and I'm not sure how that was supposed to attract a different audience. Maybe it did globally. I don't know. I'm not really studying the numbers. There's nothing that they really do that attracts my attention as much as this does. The idea that you were going to play in a shotgun and shorts. I mean, 95% of people that play golf across the country start all of their tournaments in a shotgun and they wear shorts and they listen to music and drink beer and have fun. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know. I don't know where that was like this really innovative thing that was going to help grow the game. Now you take our tech society and the number of people that are into Top Golf or simulator golf, and you put Tiger Woods in front of a 60-foot screen. I mean, now we're talking about something that's like completely different, but yet still kind of harkens back to the roots of the game and match play and having some fun, but taking these young pros, I know Tiger's not the youngest, but some of these younger guys, and putting them in a different sort of arena to show their personality a lot more. And also the when you start to create, so many people thought like when they created this league that they were just going to like, oh, they're going to go play Pebble Beach on a simulator or Augusta National. Like, well, wait, time out. No, they're going to create golf courses that are supremely unique and based upon the players that are involved, like it's Rory versus one of the other long hitters. Like, all right, well, let's give him a 300-yard par 3 and let's see what happens. Right? Like they don't have to go find the golf ball. They're hitting into a screen. Like at the end of the day, they're going to have a lot of fun with this thing. And to me, that's truly innovative. That's really going to draw upon a different audience. You put it on on an evening. It's not taking up 6 hours on a Sunday afternoon where people might be with their families and kids or doing other things. It really kind of resonates and kind of gives them the same sort of inspiration they have as like when they go to like a top golf situation or when they hit on a simulator. It's not nearly as demanding as it is out on the golf course and having to play the next maybe shot from inside of a bunker or from behind a tree or something like that, And I think that TGL represents something completely different about golf, and I think that that's a good thing. There's a very young audience out there that's not watching the PGA Tour. They're watching YouTube golf, and they're watching all these different formats of play, and these young people having fun using golf courses in ways that people never even imagined that are our parents' age. And I think it's really cool, and I think it's very cool that two of the leaders of our game, Rory and Tiger, put this thing together and said, hey, we're going to go hit balls into a screen, and no matter how many people want to be hypercritical about that, let's let it play out for a month or two, or at least a season, and let's see what happens. But I'm super psyched about it.
Speaking of that other league that was out there trying to be disruptive, we also heard this week that Live Golf may be looking for a new CEO. The long-rumored replacement of Greg Norman as their CEO appears to be finally starting to happen. Do you think that's been a roadblock to Live and the PGA Tour making any kind of partnership agreement, and once his replacement is named, things can progress, or do you think it's unrelated?
Oh boy, on a checklist of things that are like the biggest challenges for that framework agreement, it's probably in the top 5, but I still think number 1 is the idea of the guys that took 100 million, how do they come back to the PGA Tour? Because the guys that are, still on the tour and stayed loyal to the mothership, right? Those guys, I think they take exception behind closed doors to the way all of that went down. And I don't think Phil or certain guys could care less about coming back, Ian Poulter or a lot of the Europeans or whatever. But I mean, I'm sure the PGA Tour would love to have Bryson back, just as an example. And how does that happen? Bryson's never going to give the money back, and I think it seems a little unrealistic that we would put him through, like Korn Ferry Tour Q School. I mean, he just won the U.S. Open, so I think he's pretty good at golf. Like so. I think the biggest challenge, when they say like, oh, there's a lot of layers to this onion and putting it all together. Really, what it comes down to is 2 things in my mind, and that is first, how do these guys come back? Do they pay a fine? How do they qualify to come back? Are they just integrated back in? And then the second thing is that how do you incorporate some sort of schedule for world golf? And I mean, I really think that the PGA Tour would love to continue to hold out and see how long Live can last and what the interest is of, the PIF in order to continue to keep funding this as if it's an endless well, like just keep throwing money down the drain. And then, but, Live probably thinks the longer we're around, the more chance we have to be accepted. I don't know about that necessarily mindset, but at the end of the day, I think the 2 biggest things are coming up with a schedule and then how the return of those players happen. I think the Greg Norman thing is almost like an olive branch. Like, hey, we want to talk more. Greg's gone.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're spot on with that piece. I think that is a symbol, right? Hey, here we go. One of the things that you guys didn't want, no longer there. All right, can we talk now? So yeah, I'm interested to see where this goes, Keith.
I think we all are, and I think that the sooner that I mean, I think there's a huge opportunity there for the leaders in this world. I mean, there's so many polarizing conversations just going on in our country, but obviously across the world, there's these conflicts and everything. And I think there's a huge opportunity here for like, 2 different sides of the world to come together and and break bread, and hopefully they do it sooner rather than later.
Keith, one of the themes of this week's show has been the ticket prices that were announced to attend the Ryder Cup. I've been asking my guests tonight their thoughts on it for both fans and volunteers. What are your thoughts on what you've heard that the prices are going to be for people to go and for even for the people that want to go there to volunteer?
Well, everyone's complaining about it, but I'm not hearing a lot of solutions. Now, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a PGA member. I mean, there are plenty of things that I've been hypercritical of the PGA of America for doing. And we could go on at length about that. But what's the solution to that problem? The inflation in this country is out of control alongside the debt. And this is not meant to be an election conversation. You are going to the priciest part of America and trying to run an event that lasts for a week, right? I've already gotten my hotel reservations because I'm going to go work for the PGA of America. I've done the last 3 PGA championships and the last Ryder Cup on the domestic side for betting coverage for them, right? So, the amount of money it costs to run these events. Now, the volunteers are paying for uniforms, right? They're also paying for access to the event because it's basically some form of a ticket for them, and it's their access, right? But at the same time, as a father of 2 and a husband, and if I wanted to take my family of 4 for $750, that's insane. But if I'm going to be critical of that, I have to be just as critical of the New York Giants or the New York Rangers. I'm a huge Rangers fan, right? And if I want to take my family to one game, it's $1,000 to walk in the door. I mean, that's insane. That is so insane. So on the list of things that are completely out of control, live sports are definitely, they're almost the top of the list. I mean, Juan Soto hits 1 home run and everyone says, well, he's going to be worth $500 million. And Shohei Ohtani's worth $700 million. What does that even mean anymore? I honestly don't know, So I agree with you. The optics on this don't look good for the PGA of America, but the cost of them doing business for 1 week every 4 years, right? And then to try to reap the rewards of that to the best of their ability, as an association that is technically listed as a 501c3, right, which is a nonprofit, is I used the phrase earlier. There's a lot of layers to that onion, right? If it was 500, would people still complain for the day to see 36 holes of golf on Friday and Saturday? To see 12 of the world's best players tee off against one another on Sunday. If it was 400 a day, would people complain? I just don't know. Again, I agree with everyone. The optics on it are terrible. The way all these stories are released. But, at the end of the day, does golf have enough negative energy these days? I mean, I sit in that media center week after week. I'm there, right? And I love to report on the prediction of what's going to happen. So in a sea of similarity where everyone just rips everything apart, right? And all of these websites are so good at tearing down professional golf. Why don't we spend 5 minutes and build it back up? After all, that's the people that's paying their livelihood, right? But media's become so acceptable to the idea that we just beat things up, why not have a story about hey, PGA of America, could someone just go sit down Seth Waugh's replacement when they announce him, or John Lindert, who's the president of the PGA, and said, hey, could you talk to us for a minute about why this is $750, right? Because it seems like an awful lot of money. And I'm sure there's no way that you can justify it. But at the end of the day, maybe we can make it be a little more sense. But the idea that and Jason Day's vest at the Masters are the most popular stories in golf aren't really telling, the true side of what's going on out there. I mean, we had an unbelievable year by one young man. He won a gold medal. He won a Masters. He won a zillion tournaments. We had another guy who took a leadership role in his life, and he kind of fired his dad. He hired a new coach. He won 2 majors this year. He took a huge step in his life. On the ladies' side, we had one woman win 5 tournaments in a row and 6 total, right? And no one talks about those things at the level of Ryder Cup ticket prices. I don't know. I just get bored with it all at times. But I don't disagree with you. It does seem a little egregious.
Yeah, I just think where it starts to fall apart, Keith, is last year in Rome, people were paying between $200 and $250 to go to the Ryder Cup, and now the PGA of America wants to raise that price 200% to get us to in the $750 range. So it just the timing feels bad to me. We're in an economy that is with high inflation and high interest rates and things of that nature. And it just feels like the timing is wrong to want to escalate the prices that much. I mean, it's up over 580% from where we were in 2019. So, like I just say, it just feels wrong to me. We're trying to grow the game, and this doesn't feel like growing the game. But hey, look, by the same token, if you want to go see the Eagles out in the Sphere in Las Vegas, you're going to pay somewhere between $350 and $1,200 to go see a concert. So that's kind of where we're at right now with these sorts of events.
Look at the price of the World Series tickets, because it's the Dodgers and the Yankees, right? And what if it was some young kid's dream to see, Aaron Judge hit a home run in a World Series game? I mean, all right, buddy, throw down $2,500 and you can go to Yankee Stadium and sit in the third tier. I mean, like I guess the Ryder Cup tickets are just a representative example of how far blown things are from time to time. I mean, at the end of the day, when I sit in that media center and the PGA Tour week after week, right? I just wish there was a lot more next on the tee stories there than there were no laying up stories, where it seems like all we do is tear things down, and you always build people up, through your research, but also with the thoughtfulness with which that you kind of engineer all of your interviews and everything, and not just promoting the people that are there, but promoting the good that they do in the game, And I mean, you're asking tough questions to a PGA member about Ryder Cup tickets. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think you're very thoughtful in your process, and I wish there was more thought going into the clickbait that, I'm constantly surrounded by.
Keith, before I let you go, remind our listeners again, how can they stay up to date with all the great things you're out there doing, whether it's online or it's on social media?
Well, the easiest thing to do is go to readtheline.com. You can subscribe to our weekly newsletter for free. I cover the men, the LPGA, and the PGA Tour from a betting perspective. Now, people might say, Keith, I'm in a state that I can't bet, like you are down in Georgia, Chris, or maybe I'm just not into betting. All I'll say is this: the narratives that I write about the golf courses, the events, and the entertainment that you're about to see will kind of flip the script on you, right? In this sea of similarity, where all this golf media and everybody gets 9 newsletters a morning that tell you all the same stories and everything, I write something completely different. And as such, I was hired this year by Golf Digest to lead all of their betting content, right? You can see me on channels like Sports Grid and so many others. And, I write for LPGA.com. I write for the PGA Tour. So if those people trust me and validate what it is I'm bringing to the table, I think y'all could learn a lot by going to readtheline.com or following me on social media. I'm on X, TikTok, and of course, Instagram. So all those platforms, YouTube, wherever you want to go, wherever you consume your media, start with readtheline.com, click away, and follow me for free. And, you never know. We might win a couple.
There you go. Keith, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come back and be a part of the show. I hope this is something that we get to do more frequently going forward, because there's nobody in my mind that is more knowledgeable about all aspects and every angle of our game than you are. So I hope you come back and do it again sometime soon.
Well, Chris, I'd love to do it on site one week next year during one of the big tournaments. So, if not a couple of them. So, you could call me anytime, and I'm more than happy to do it for you and your audience. The consistency that you provide to your audience and the product that you give in golf is second to none. And to be a small part of it makes me very proud.
Well, I appreciate that very much, my friend. All the best to you and your family. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Take care, and let's go Yankees.
See you, Keith. That is the great Keith Stewart, folks. Again, if you have the means and you enjoy betting on the game, Keith is your guy. Readtheline.com and at readtheline_ is where you can find him on X. You can also find him on X and Instagram at KJ Stewart PGA. And I'm telling you, Keith is the most well-rounded, knowledgeable guy in all aspects of our game than you'll find just about anywhere. And to quote Matthew Laurance's character in Eddie and the Cruisers, he knows what goes. So check him out. You can also find him on the Stripe Show podcast, which you can watch on YouTube. He and Travis Fulton do a great job there. Keith has got a segment, so check it out there as well, and give him a follow on social media. We'll get him back on the show again soon for you. All right, my friends, it is time for me to put a bow on this week's edition of Next on the Tee. I want to send out my sincere thanks again to Tom Patry, Dr. Bob Jones IV, Matthew Laurance, and Keith Stewart for joining me this week. Scheduled to join me next week are Robert Morris men's golf coach Steve Shingledecker will make a return appearance. Former Houston Oilers Pro Bowl quarterback Dan Pastorini is going to join me. Dan has a wonderful charity event that we'll talk a lot about. And then I'll be joined by a pair of top 100 instructors, Brandon Stooksbury and Mike Malizia. So it's going to be a great show next week, folks. I hope you'll continue to come back and be a part of it with us. I want to thank our friends again over at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review for hosting this show on their site. For coverage of everything going on in Western Pennsylvania, including your favorite sports, go to triblive.com. You can find this show by then clicking on the Sports section tab, and you're going to find the most recent episode of this show front and center for you on the homepage of the Sports section. Or you can click on Sports and then Podcast Network, and then you'll see the Next on the Tee logo. Click on that, and several episodes from this season are going to be available for you there as well. You can also find the show pretty much anywhere you get your podcast content, including on Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Player.fm. And as always, my thanks to the great folks over at Good Pods for making this show one of their recommended podcasts. So please download the free app and stream your favorite podcast right there on your favorite device. But as I say to you guys each and every week, the biggest thanks go out to all of you for being the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts. I appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.